What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the VGFightSchool channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today we're going to be talking about the disconnect between gamers and developers. This conversation is stemming from the recently leaked GTA 6 footage, and it's been very interesting to see all of the above. Now, I don't care about GTA. You won't hear me or see me playing that game or talk about the game if there wasn't anything that could be learned from it. So we look at, say, other games like Gotham Knights, Ubisoft games, and see how many cases they become punching bags for gamers all over the place. And this new leak, or whatever the heck it is, of the GTA 6 game is really interesting because it shows a lot of debugging footage. So people have been like, man, this looks bad, this looks like this, or whatever it is. But the reality is you just got to see the game in an engine format or within its software, and all of the debugging pretty much happening. So everything that you get to see there is in the development side of things. That's your developer view in most cases. Now, one really cool thing that I think is this is giving some of us kind of like, a back door into looking at, oh, this is how they do this stuff. Those of us that are into game development, it's quite fascinating to just see it. But for then you see that in the gaming world, sometimes most gamers don't even care. So you get to see people basically memeing and talking about how it looks very bad, or actually using it as a slight to slam on other Ubisoft games like, oh, GTA 6 in its incomplete form looks better than a Ubisoft game, blah, blah, blah. And then people genuinely saying that, oh, the game looks bad. What is this nonsense? Yada, yada, yada. Not understanding that what they got to see is just an early version, possibly, of the game in its most early phases, where the protagonist and the characters are actually in testing to debug certain features. And this also brought me to a place as I was scrolling through the Twitters where I saw developers pretty much making fun of gamers, in some cases in a lighthearted way, maybe tongue in cheek, about gamers not knowing anything about game development. Now, most of the time, we gamers are genuinely sincere folk. I've been in the gaming, scene for a while, reading comments, just engaging in a conversation overall. There's no doubt that they're just amazing people in gaming and, find it as a good hobby and a wonderful thing to just engage in their own entertainment choice. They'd rather just play a video game than watch Netflix and binge, all kinds of different series. They just use that as it's just their alternative, time enjoyment type of thing. They game with friends, game with family, all of that stuff, right? And then you also have this situation and this scenario where I think that now is the opportunity for gamers and game developers to start to have a different dynamic in terms of the way that they have conversations around video games. That is, educating gamers, or at least gamers taking the time and taking the ownership of educating themselves in how video games are made. You see, when I first started this journey and started discovering how they make video games and how difficult this thing was, I used to talk about it a lot on my other channel regarding Tom Clancy's The Division. And when I started, I got dragged through the coals. I got people tell me that I was a shill, call me names, tell me that I was getting paid by the developers. And this was a Ubisoft game too. So that was basically something that people could use as fodder. But I'm of the different ilk. So for me, those are nothing in a sense. But it just kind of saddened me that many people out there just don't care. But what I've realized and what I've recognized is, regardless of that, there are people who are genuinely curious about this. And I want to use this opportunity to say to the developers, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to actually set the pace in having these conversations with your audiences and your communities, and actually doing showcases that will give them a sense of what it is that you have done and what it takes to make video games or to bring these games to life. You see, I understand that, developers are always working. They spend hours and hours, days and years developing a video game. And so there just might not be enough time to go ahead and do these things. But this is the foundational work that you lay for your audiences and for your community. Yes, just because another video game did very well doesn't, without the developers actually doing anything extra, doesn't mean that will be the standard for the industry. I think in gaming industry, most times publishers are very, I don't know what it is. I think they're very jaded, thinking because another publisher was able to do it, they're going to be able to do it the exact same way. When in reality, that's not necessarily how it's going to be. And so more and more we encourage, as content creators across the board these days, we encourage developers to come out there and talk about their craft. I don't want to mention any names in this video, but there are a lot of developers who already do this, but I don't think they're enough. Because yes, there are people that are still not going to care. It doesn't matter what it is you tell them. You could basically break down source code for some people and say, oh, this is why we did this. And they'll still say, oh, developers are lazy, because they sit on their couch every day and eat chips and say developers are lazy, when they could pick up a free engine and actually learn the craft and maybe go compete against these developers. But they don't do that. So many times I tune folk like that out, and some of us we do, but still we cannot tune them out without getting at least some kind of an understanding from the sources themselves on how this is done. So in looking at this GTA 6 leak and the GTA 6 fiasco, one thing I tell myself is, if no one's going to do the job, if the developers are not going to go do the job, I want to encourage my fellow gamers and say this might be the best time that you actually get yourself into understanding the craft, understanding what it takes to actually make a video game. Like, I remember making a statement in one of my videos where I said, Marvel Avengers was actually a decent game. It just wasn't up to par according to, a lot of different things. And somebody told me, dude, you're capping. Marvel Avengers was a terrible game. And I laughed and I said, man, if only they knew how much work it takes to make a character like Black Widow. You guys know that Black Widow is basically Red Hood, right? Like, if you think about it, in a sense, she has a grapple mechanic. She, and she's basically a better version. Let me not say a better version, a more flexible version of Red Hood. Probably we would have loved if Red Hood played like this, where, you have two sidearms, you can shoot different kinds, right? She has a shooting mechanics, aiming system, aim offsets and all that, a dodge mechanic. She has weapons that she uses and has combos and has aerial capabilities. This, in my opinion, is not easy to develop. I don't care what video game it is that it comes in. If we sat down right here and we open up a notepad and say, all right, let's go for it. Let's see how much code it takes to make a character like this. Your jaw will hit the floor so fast to realize that this is a very difficult thing to pull off. But the developers, they pulled it off. The challenge, nonetheless, was having to make a video game that would appeal to their communities, because publisher basically threw these guys in the middle of all of this. They wanted to monetize their game heavily. So the player be damned. Right? That's basically what we've faced all this while in gaming, hence this misunderstanding. And so to the developers out there, if you're watching the video, if you are into game development, there's nothing wrong with writing a journal or a blog or a diary or something. Maybe talking about other video games if you are bound by, say, an NDA in your own studio. I know a developer who's into combat design that talks about combat design of like almost any other video game except the one that they actually are working on, and they have an entire blog about it. They're doing good work. And as a gamer or somebody who's into video games, you can look into things like that. Another thing too is explaining the creative process. Because game development is not just in the person that's typing the code. There are those who are actually into the creative side of things. And for some reason, the creative side may or may not be in a position to talk about, a lot of their creative decisions. But I think sometimes, these can be actually put out there for their communities, for them to just say, hey, this is how we're actually coming up with the art. Because directors do this, movie producers do this. And most of us know how our favorite movies are made. We've seen, from the casting and all of the above, the locations where movies are shot, where we get to see glimpses of those. And it's really interesting, but we don't get to see a lot of glimpses of game development. Like, you can look on YouTube and find, say, a video that has maybe, some shooting of a Marvel movie. Somebody got a clip from a cell phone. The video will have millions of views, yet you have a 4-hour developer exposure of their video game and barely anyone will watch the video. And the game probably does well and you can see the back workings or whatever it is. If you want videos like that, I can leave links for you guys. And so I think here we are. These video games are coming out, and it just, sometimes I get sad because I look and say, man, it seems like these developers putting a lot of work and people just don't understand how the work is. But I also hold the developers as well accountable for not actually taking the time to educate. Whenever people are not aware, one of the best things that you can do if you're in a position to actually know is to just educate them. You'll be amazed how much change can actually happen. But I'm not waiting for any developer, man. I'm going to maybe learn how to be a developer myself. And on this channel, we're going to continue these conversations until we get to a point where we're not unaware about video game mechanics and we start to look at them from a whole different perspective. So thanks so much for watching the video. I really want to hear your thoughts about the GTA 6 leak. I don't know if I call it GTA 5 or 6, and how all of this has actually been going on and what you think about game development and player reactions these days. Peace out.